The boss is here tonight. Time now is 7 o'clock. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Just a reminder to everybody, this meeting is being recorded live on CNET's YouTube channel. Before we get into public comments, I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda for tonight and move number 8, which is Cynthia Hahn's CNET presentation, up to position number 4, right after the public comments. Do I hear a motion to do that?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. So, unless you really want to be further back in the.
No, I love that agenda position.
Yep. Okay, I figured you
That's why it was
might.
done.
All right, next up is public comments. You have 3 minutes to comment on anything on or off the agenda. So would anybody like to speak? Yes, sir. Please come up to the table and, for the record, state your name.
I'm Reed Moyer, 50 Lynn Circle. I'm here on behalf of all the monarch butterflies in the township. At the end of Chenelly Lane, where it joins Lutz, every year a whole bunch of milkweed grows up, and then the mowing crew comes past and mows it down. And as you may know, milkweed's really the only thing that monarch butterfly caterpillars eat. So I'd like to ask that you not mow down the milkweed at the end of Chenelly and probably other places in the township so we can have more butterflies. Simple request, I think. Is that something you can do?
Well,
If
we'll
the-
have to talk about it with the board, but
I mean,
is-
does it make sense?
at the end of Chenelly Drive, where?
Well, as it joins Lutz,
Okay,
underneath the power line.
Right where it comes out there.
Right. In fact, last year I think he mowed like 12 feet in instead of one width. They went double wide, so they cut down twice as much. So, if you could, does that sound reasonable?
Well, it sounds reasonable. I hope you have your own butterfly garden.
We do.
'Cause
We do.
I planted
more and more
probably
people are letting
Fistfuls
their
of milkweed
milkweed grow.
seeds last year, so.
Yeah. So milkweed's good. And if you can do it in other places too, it's not hard to spot. Just lift up the blade and let the butterflies live.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, go ahead, please. If he who hesitates or she who hesitates is lost.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Foster, and I live 40 Ike Circle, Centennial Hills. And I'm here tonight basically to acknowledge and thank Cindy Hahn and her dedicated staff at CNET. I appreciate that they record and broadcast our local government meetings and that they make them available to our citizens. Excuse me. I also want to thank Amy Smith for providing the agenda and the detailed attachments that are provided at all these meetings. Both these services are critical to an informed and engaged community. I've attended many other township meetings in neighboring municipalities where these services are not available, and the contrast and the engagement with the community is stark. Their citizens are unaware of what's happening in the community without access to this information. Excuse me. On this topic, I'm disappointed that our committee representatives can no longer give a short oral report of the meetings that they attend. Without an oral summary that appears on CNET, their volunteer time and their efforts are wasted. No one knows if something of interest or importance happened during those meetings. I hope this board will reconsider and reinstate a short 3-minute summary of the committee reports and show respect for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? You got it.
I'm actually here, I'm Lena Schaefer, 50 Paul's Lane. I'm here for several members of my family, so I'll be reading on their behalf, so I'll need some additional time. This concerns the SCLO library funding. The first part I'm going to read is written by my 2 children. They wanted to be here tonight, but they have other activities. Our names are Lacey Schaefer, 10th grade, and Mason Schaefer, 6th grade. We have both been residents of Halfmoon Township for our whole lives. Alongside that, we have also been SCLO members for our entire lives. We use the resources of SCLO Library frequently and are concerned that they might be taken away from us. Firstly, one main reason, a resource that we use is Libby. Combined, we have taken over 701 audiobooks and ebooks since we started using Libby in 2018. We use Libby every day, whether it's listening to audiobooks while cleaning or building Legos, or reading ebooks while sitting with our dog. Libby has specifically been essential in teaching Mason how to read. It helped me, helped me with comprehension and learning how to use context clues. I was behind for the rest of my grade, and now, thanks to Libby, I am above average. Libby also helped both of us during the pandemic. Without the school library and already having read all the books in our home, we needed something to do to keep our minds sharp. Libby offered that to us and is one of the main reasons that we didn't lose our progress in academics. It also became something that helped bring our family closer together. We discussed the books that we read and gave us conversation starters. Another resource that helped us were the book lockers and drop boxes. Because we lived farther from the library than the average family, it was hard for us to get books. Our parents are both working and busy, and it's expensive to drive all the way to the library, considering how many books they take out. The locker and the drop boxes near our house make it convenient for us as well as inexpensive. SCLO has given us representation. For whatever experience we're having, we know that there will always be a book in SCLO that makes us feel seen. There is a multitude of research contributing to the fact that representation positively affects youth's perception of themselves. And although we might not relate to every book in the library, it is still important to learn about other identities and cultures. It is also important to note that SCLO offers more than just books. They have many videos and board games, movies and magazines, and an abundance of other things. To have a well-rounded life is crucial that a child is exposed to all of these things. By taking away funding from SCLO, you will ensure that future children living in Halfmoon Township will not have access to these things. SCLO has had a major role in our lives, and we're sure that will continue into the future. So now that I've read for them, I'd like to read something for myself. I would also like to say a few words since I cannot attend the June 12th work session due to work commitments, but feel the topic of SCLO funding needs to be taken more seriously by the board. Thus, I'm here tonight. There is no question that SCLO Library acts as a hub of educational, cultural, and diverse resources that support the entire community and benefits everyone. As a parent and taxpaying member of Halfmoon Township, I would like the board to view Halfmoon's financial contributions to SCLO Library not as a blank check, but as an investment to maintain the quality and breadth of SCLO Library collections services for Halfmoon residents and the community. The cost of SCLO to maintain the collections and provide current desirable resources is substantial. Many people note how nice SCLO is to use and how many resources they provide. But that is the result of financial commitments for many years by local townships, including ours. Until this year, Halfmoon has been making that investment needed to maintain the current and diverse library collections, but pulled out because they couldn't understand how the money was being used. Since then, I haven't heard action by the township to better understand the joint articles of agreement, only more delays and obstacles for Halfmoon residents. SCLO will certainly cut resources to Halfmoon residents if funding is not restored. Our funding makes it possible for SCLO to provide residents of Half Moon access to a wide variety of resources in various ways that are specific for rural community, including digital downloads, lockers and drop boxes, and subscriptions. Studies have shown that residents receive over $7 in value back for every dollar they invest in their local library. Limiting access to educational reading materials isn't a cost savings for Half Moon residents. As my children have mentioned, we cannot always go to the library in person, but love the library coming to us. And it also provides a savings that we use to support local community businesses. This is the same for many Half Moon residents who cannot physically make it to the library or acquire library materials after hours or remotely. Our vacation packing list includes downloading books from SCLO Library, books you can't lose, free, won't get damaged, and you can renew remotely, and are great car entertainment for the whole family. For low-income families, it also allows them access to resource materials they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford or have access to in smaller towns such as State College. State College Area School District teachers and students, many who live in this township, use the library resources to support supplement the school library. Thus, by cutting the funding, you are damaging that mutualistic relationship. We will see a decline in SCLO resources, which will put pressure on the school budget and our school taxes. Besides educational materials, there is also a mental health component to the library being available remotely to Half Moon residents. Access to the library is a gateway to learning, but also has a comfort and calming attribute we shouldn't ignore in the current prevalence of violence. We also all enjoy being able to stay informed by the township through using and watching CNET and don't want to see that service go away. Half Moon's financial commitment to SCLO is helping to build a strong educational and emotional resource for all of its members. Please take the steps needed to restore your commitment to SCLO and its funding for next year and beyond.
All right, I'm gonna stop you there, but thanks. Who's next?
Hello, my name is Donna Hughes, and I live on Marengo Road, and I'll try to be brief. Really just want to second what everyone has said. One of the things that I'm really glad that Reed brought up the not mowing the milkweed. One of the reasons that we're having such a problem with the monarchs is because of the lack of milkweed. And it used to be one of those weeds, that's why it's called a weed, that was just everywhere along the road. That's just what it was. And a lot of the mowing and spraying is what has been really killing off a lot of the milkweed. So I would second that to not be cutting down milkweed. And of course, I have milkweed planted all over the place. So I'd second that. Also, I wanted to say, second what Wayne said, that I've missed the last couple of meetings. But as I understand it, you have cut committee reports and expect people to read them online and then bring questions. I think that we should have the reports restored. Keep them short if you want, but I think that this is a public meeting. It's only an opportunity once, maybe twice a month, for people to hear what's going on, and I think it's really important for our public and democracy to be getting those reports. And then the third thing, I just wanted to add to what Lena was saying about the library services. I think you probably always all have a picture in mind of who it is that are advocates for the library. But I was recently having a conversation with a man who lives here. He's in his 80s. You see driving his pickup truck up and down the road almost every day. And he was talking about reading. And he said, oh, I read a lot. He says, matter of fact, when I run out of books, I just get them from SCLO. So he drives his pickup truck down to the middle of State College. He's 80 some years old. He says, I get a bunch and then I just drop them off at the drop box. And I thought, wow, now that is somebody, and I know all of you know him if you've lived here very long, might be surprised that he is a user of those services. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I did want to say, is the Zoom on tonight? Because I didn't.
As far as
it
I
is?
know.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is David Curran. I've lived in Halfmoon Township for 35 years. And I'm not really sure if I understand correctly that there's a potential for the implementation of a concrete manufacturing and asphalt manufacturing coming this way. If there is, I'm hoping all the environmental considerations have been taken into account. I don't know very much about either of those, but I know that asphalt has an aroma once it's poured. So I'm thinking while it's being made, there's got to be aerosols being vented into the air, and I'm concerned about our water in this area. I don't know where the location of these two things are supposed to happen. I just want to make sure that our air is clean for our kids and our families, and we have safe water to drink.
Can I ask you where you heard that, or if you're allowed to say?
Yeah, I picked up something from the office in there. I forgot to bring it with me, and I didn't really. I scanned it, and that's what I recommend, or that's what I remember. So I don't know if it's a fact. I don't know, but it came from that office.
Okay, well, I'll have to look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Peggy Sue Majeski. I just wanted to come and state that while I know there are a lot of people in the township who really enjoy using SCLO Library, I find that there would be better uses for our tax dollars. I use the Internet Archive myself to read. I also have a collection of books that I read in my own home, and I don't find any reason to go to SCLO to be represented by their book collection. I don't really know what to say other than not everyone is for SCLO. They're just the people who show up here. That's all.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Move on. Cynthia Hahn, please come on up, or come on down.
Bring Karen Miller with me.
Both welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Miller, and I volunteered to be on the board of directors. Cindy is the executive director of CNET, and she's here to give the board of supervisors their yearly report on. Feel free, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My lovely assistant here will bring the presentation up on the screen. Just to start with just some highlights. Thank you very much for allowing me to present to you. Halfmoon Township has now been a member of CNET for a full 15 years. And so we want to congratulate you on that, and we thank you for your support over all those years. CNET produced 501 programs last year. And as many of you know, we have a very small staff, 4 full-time and 3 part-time employees. We do have a number of Penn State interns every semester, so that does help with the workload. But we produced over 500 programs last year with that small staff. Part of the big news of 2022 is that there is a new cable company moving into the region named Shentel. Shentel negotiated and completed franchises with both Ferguson Township and State College Borough in 2022. And then so far in 2023, they have completed franchises with College Township, Patton Township, and Harris Township. And we expect a franchise to be complete with Bellefonte Borough before the end of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, if you haven't already, that you may be hearing from Chantel about the possibility of providing service and wanting a franchise with Half Moon. I don't know if you've heard from them yet, but it may be that you hear from them shortly. The other highlight was we finally were able to negotiate an agreement with Penn State where the university has committed to an annual minimum contribution to CNET, which is something that they had not committed to since, I think it's 2002. And so we were very happy to be able to do that. Next, I wanted to just go over with you a little bit about our funding, because funding is always in their mind. Our operating costs are contributed by our 16 member organizations. The member organizations, which are municipalities, use their franchise fees from cable companies to pay their CNET dues. So, for example, Halfmoon Township received $37,286 last year from Comcast as a result of their franchise agreement with Comcast, and their CNET dues were a little less than half of that, $16,375. So that's essentially how we are funded in terms of operating costs. In terms of capital needs, our capital needs are provided entirely by the cable companies. Comcast subscribers will see a very small little, about 32 cents per month on their cable bill that's called a PEG fee. And those funds are sent to the township quarterly and then forwarded on to CNET for our capital purchases, cameras and microphones and things of that nature. The Chantel model is a little different. And so if and when you decide to do a franchise with Chantel, their capital funding structure is different, but they would also still be paying for CNET's capital purchases, not the member organizations. So at this time, the members are not contributing toward capital, and we do have a fairly very stable and significant balance in our capital fund going forward to pay for those capital needs. In terms of Halfmoon Township's programming, last year there were 24 supervisors meetings, another 15 bulletin board messages, and we value those as 1/10 of a program. So those 15 messages were equal to 1.5 programs. The township did cease publishing bulletin board messages sometime in 2022. I don't know exactly when it was, but that was the last time that the bulletin board messages with the agendas were published. So the total number of programs last year was 25.5, and that's about 4.7% of all of the programming by all of our member organizations, which is up sort of significantly from 2021. At that point, it was 3.5%. And the next slide shows you a graph of what your programming looks like over the past 5-year period of time. And the 5 years is important because our funding formula is based on a 5-year rolling average. So years come in and years drop out. We do that so that if for any reason you have a really particularly heavy year, where you have a lot of extra meetings, a year like 2019 appeared to be, you don't get hit with a huge dues increase the very next year. We sort of slide it over a 5-year period of time, and that's why we structure it that way. So if you look at that 5-year period, 2018 to 2022, you sponsored 4.78% of all of the programming by all of our members, which is really stable. The previous 5-year period of time of 17 to 21, it was 4.79. So your programming levels have really been quite stable over the past 5 years. So again, those numbers between 2018 and 2022 is what I will evaluate when looking at what your 2024 financial contribution will be. that 5-year period of time. This graph shows all of our member organizations over the past 5 years, and the red arrow there is pointing down to Halfmoon Townships. I think your programming, I think I have this correct, is probably the lowest amount of any of the center region municipalities, but I think that's appropriate given your population and such. And just as a reminder about how and where to watch us, all of your programming, of course, is on Channel 7. Your meetings are televised Saturday at 8 p.m., Monday at 1 p.m., Tuesday at 6 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Your meetings are streamed live on YouTube, of course, and they're also there. They remain on YouTube for years. And cnet1.org, our website, we put your meetings up and we index them by agenda item. I think I may have a picture on the next slide of what that basically looks like. So running down the right-hand side are all of the individual agenda items for that meeting. You just click on the agenda item you're interested in, and it takes you right to that point in the meeting. I know I've told you before, but it's worth a reminder that in addition to cable TV and our website, all of your meetings are available on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And we have now created little promotional videos on our website that tell people exactly how to find our meetings on those platforms. So if they do have Apple TV or Roku at their home, it just walks them through step by step how to find the CNET programs on that particular platform, which I think is really helpful. The first time I went to Apple TV to try to find them, I couldn't. So that's when I decided we needed little videos. In terms of your online programming, I took a look at the period between January of 2022 and April of 2023. So on our website, cnet1.org, your meetings are averaging 121.3 views per meeting. On YouTube, your meetings are averaging 196.6 views. So pretty impressive numbers given the population of the township. That averages over 317 views per meeting. Very impressive. And do keep in mind that this is not television viewing. Comcast considers viewing data on TV to be proprietary information, and they will not release it to us. So this does not account for any TV views, just the online views. And lastly, I wanted to just remind you of what I think is a very important service to the residents. We host candidate interviews every year, both primary and general. Invitations are sent to candidates for federal, state, and county offices, as long as that office represents at least some portion of Center County. We do not do the interviews ourselves. We use journalists in the area. The last time around, Haley Kynes with the Center Daily Times and Jeff Rushton with statecollege.com were our professional interviewers. And we televise the interviews on our cable channels, and they are also available online. So I'm very proud of that service. I really think that's something very special and unique that Center County has, and so I just wanted to talk just a little bit about that. And I think that concludes my presentation. At your seats is the 2022 annual report. You'll see some pictures in there of people you know. And at the chair's pleasure, I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
I've got a question. How many views does like Ferguson Township or State College Borough get?
Less than yours.
That's because we're more entertaining.
They do.
So.
Less than yours. I think to some extent it may be because they may be so permeated with cable that more people are watching on cable rather than online. But I also think that you have a very engaged citizenry. And so Ferguson Township, I think, is sort of in the 90s. State College Borough, amazingly enough, and it may be because they have a heavy student population. You have 45,000 residents in the borough, but 75% of them are students. CNET may not be of great interest to most students, but your views are higher than either of those municipalities.
It's interesting.
I have a question, Cindy. CNET covers all of the COG committee meetings, is that correct?
No,
They don't?
no, we don't. We cover the general forum.
General
And
forum?
yes, all the general forum meetings, and we also cover the finance committee meetings in the
Finance.
fall, those additional finance committee meetings.
That's for the budget related
Right.
stuff, okay.
That's right. Once in a blue moon, there will be a committee meeting of the COG that has an item of particular interest that we'll be asked to cover, but usually not.
Okay, so it's general forum that you cover?
Yes, yeah,
Primarily?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Have any other questions for us?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Your room,
Oh,
new room is working very well.
I don't usually do this, but Ms. Hughes has a question,
Oh.
so.
Okay, actually, I'm not sure who to direct this at. Maybe just Cindy, if you could just repeat this. You said that Half Moon has ceased having announcements on CNET?
Right. The CNET bulletin board is available. I'm conscious of talking to the microphone so Tiffany doesn't yell at me. The CNET bulletin board allows messages to be posted, and most municipalities, or a lot of them, use them to post their agendas. In an effort to control increases in dues in 2022, I believe the township decided to no longer post those messages. One of the reasons, of course, is we know that Amy sends out agendas with the email blasts, which provides agenda information to people in the township, and not every township does that. But yeah, that was what I said. That happened sometime in 2022.
Can you tell me how much that's saving the township by not having those bulletin board announcements?
You know, I can't. And the reason I can't is that because the funding formula evaluates your percentage of use, it's very difficult to give you like a price per meeting or a price per bulletin board messages. We value them at about 1/10 of a program. I mean, if I had to make a wild guess, I would say probably all said and done, you would be looking at something like $50 or $60 a message.
A message.
Yeah. But again, that really isn't a concrete answer because the formula is a formula and it evaluates percentages of use.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then I would just like to add a comment to the supervisors to please reconsider that and to start having our announcements on the bulletin board.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. And thanks for the great agenda placement.
Yep, anytime. All right, next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes from May 11th, 2023, regular supervisors meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion by the board, questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right.
And it's approved. Next up, the consent agenda. Ratification of bills for the period of 5/6/2023 to 5/19/2023, $23,756.12 in the general fund, $50 in the open space preservation fund, and from 05/2023 to 06/2023 in the general fund, $174,794.34, open space preservation fund in the amount of $404.60, and the state highway liquid fuels in the amount of $5,599.30. $1.37. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Approved. Next up, we are going to hold 2 public hearings on a couple of ordinances. I'm going to have Mark, our planner, give you a rundown. We're going to start with sewers and sewage disposal amendment, and he'll just give the public a rundown. Then I will open the hearing for comments, and the public is allowed to speak or comment on that, and that will be entered into the record. So,
All right.
take it away.
Yep. Ordinance 2023-02 proposes several amendments to Chapter 181 Sewers and Sewage Disposal of your code. The amendments are primarily adding several definitions to the ordinance, as well as 2 minor amendments to make sure that your regulations are consistent with the Center Region Growth Boundary and Sewer Service Area Implementation Agreement. Those 2 amendments primarily deal with when a community on-lot disposal system is required to be utilized. That's for any development that proposes 15 or more lots or equivalent dwelling units. And there's also a section that's being added to the ordinance that states that alternative public wastewater treatment systems are prohibited within the township. And again, this is to make sure your ordinances are consistent with the Center Region Growth Boundary and Sewer Service Area Implementation Agreement. That is on your agenda later to be discussed, but these changes and that agreement would still be consistent if that amended agreement is adopted. So there would be no need to amend this again in the near future.
Okay. All right, 7:35, we're going to open a public hearing on the proposed ordinance 2023-03 or 02, excuse me, for sewer and sewer disposal. Would anybody like to come up and give testimony? Anyone? No one. Does the board have any questions for anyone? Patty, I know you're online. Do you have any questions for Mark or anybody? I think she's still online.
I do not, sorry, I had trouble with my mouse.
Okay, not a problem. All right, hearing none. No other questions by the attendees. It's 7:36 PM. I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, any discussion by the board
On this particular.
on this particular ordinance?
Just a comment, I think it's further progress on making the ordinances better and keeping up to date.
I would agree. All right, let's call for the question. Would anybody like a motion to approve the ordinance amendment?
So moved.
Got a motion. Do we have a second? Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ordinance amendment is approved. All right, we'll go on to 2023-03, which is Chapter 255-13C zoning and Chapter 255-19B zoning amendments. And Mark, here again, would you please give us the public a rundown?
Yeah, so those 2 sections of your ordinance are your agricultural zoning district and your single-family residential zoning district. And this ordinance is proposing to strike from the conditional uses list from both of these ordinances, community sewage treatment plants. This is related to, again, the implementation agreement and making sure that your zoning ordinance is consistent in not allowing those types of facilities here in the township. So that's a rundown. It's just simply striking those 2 from the list of those 2 districts.
Okay, I'm going to open the hearing at 7:38. Hearing is hereby open. Would any of the public like to give testimony relating to the zoning ordinance amendments?
Can I ask a question?
Sure can.
If colds aren't allowed, community on-lot's not allowed, and we don't have public sewer, what are the options for a development, either single-family or over 15, development?
Sure. Community on-lot disposal is allowed per the ordinance. It's required if there's 15 or more dwelling units or lots in a development that's proposed. And as long as they're residential lots, and it's defined as anything under 2 acres. So that is an option to do. septic treatment is community on lot. The community sewage treatment plant is a public treatment plant or a large-scale plant that might use alternative technology, which again, the Center Region Growth Boundary Agreement prohibits the use of those systems. That's why we're removing that from the agricultural and residential districts.
Are they somehow bad, or we just want to make sure that the local sewage authority is in control of our sewage?
I think that in the case of a community sewage treatment plant, I wouldn't say they're bad, but they're very costly and can be a high liability for the community. Ultimately, municipalities are responsible to ensure that wastewater treatment is taking place within their boundaries. So if a system like that were to fail in a development, the taxpayers could ultimately be responsible for fixing it if the developer or the property owners can't afford it. So it's really a kind of a liability matter that the Center Region municipalities decided they would like to just have community on-lot and regular on-lot disposal as the option outside of the growth boundary.
Okay, one more question. This goes into effect now, but it's also already stated in the Center Region COG agreement. So when did it take effect in Halfmoon Township? From today forward or from 10 years ago?
No, it would take effect once it's adopted. Because it's listed in the ordinance as a permitted use, you can't deny someone the right to do something that's listed as permitted. So it wouldn't take effect until the ordinance is actually adopted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The township's just cleaning up odds and ends of things that have been a problem, so hopefully that makes sense. Anybody else like to comment or give testimony? Hearing none. Anybody from the Board of Supervisors? Okay, hearing none. It's 7:40. I'm going to close the public hearing. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance change?
So moved.
And a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion by the board. Any other discussion by the board before we make the motion? Hearing none. Call for the question. All those in favor of the ordinance amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ordinance is hereby approved. Thank you, Mark, for your diligent work on that one. I'm sure it was a chore to fish through that ordinance and find that stuff. Okay, next up, draft of the amended regional growth boundary and sewer service area implementation agreement. And we're going to just discuss this, I guess, at this point.
That's right. I'm going to give a brief presentation that was prepared by the Center Region Planning Agency Director. He wasn't able to make it tonight and asked that I go ahead and provide this presentation. So the COG, Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee, as well as the Center Regional Planning Commission, forwarded this amended agreement out to the Center Region municipalities for their review and discussion. So I'm going to, again, go through the presentation, if you can pull that up here for me. And so this agreement ties two plans that Halfmoon Township participates in together, and has the agreement determines how you're going to go about implementing two elements of these plans. So one is the regional growth boundary that comes from the Center Region Comprehensive Plan that primarily defines how the region's going to address future growth and changes from a development standpoint. And then the sewer service area, which is defined in your Act 537 sewage facilities plan. And that is the area within the Center Region where public sewer is provided. So the goal of these two boundaries is to direct higher intensity development inside of the growth boundary. That's largely done with zoning regulations. And that allows us to try to protect the areas outside of the growth boundary as having more of a rural character to them, which is important to a lot of residents. It also allows us to utilize our existing infrastructure, not have costly sewer expansions, and ultimately align at what is a limited public resource, which is public sewer, with the future growth capacity within the growth boundary, and make sure we have that available. So this regional agreement really aims to combine those two boundaries that are from separate documents together and have a consolidated means of implementing them both. And the next slide here. So as far as our development pattern is concerned, the vast majority of development in the Center Region is taking place within inside of the regional growth boundary. We have a fair amount of capacity remaining within the boundary as well to support future growth. Somewhere in the neighborhood of around 3,300 vacant acres that could support upwards of around 11,000 dwelling units and I think 18 million square feet of non-residential development. So this area within the growth boundary, which no part of Half Moon Township is in the growth boundary. So the other 5 municipalities is where this boundary is located. And again, it has the ability to provide a decent amount of growth that could very well support the region's needs for the next several decades at least. In terms of sewer capacity, there is a lot of hydraulic capacity at the University Area Joint Authority. There's a little less discharge capacity, and that tends to be the biggest issue for the UAJ is trying to figure out where to get rid of that water. But ultimately, there's adequate capacity there at the facility to treat the potential development within the growth boundary, which is one of the goals of having these two boundaries together. And then, again, this allows us to protect our areas outside our farmland, as well as our source water. A lot of that tends to be located in our rural areas from being impacted by development. So overall, this agreement that was initially adopted back in 2006 and then readopted in 2013 has helped to implement the goals of both the comprehensive plan and the Act 537 sewage facilities plan. Go to the next slide, please. So the agreement that was adopted back in 2013 requires a review every 5 years. So in 2018, there was a review conducted of the agreement, and it was determined that no changes would be made. But now we're in the next review, 5-year review cycle, and there was an assessment done by our agency to take a look at this agreement and see if any changes are needed since it's been a decade since it was last adopted. This agreement includes a process to determine how the region can expand the growth boundary and sewer service area. So if someone wants to develop outside of the existing growth boundary and they want public sewer, they would have to go through the process that's defined in this agreement to be able to propose that to the center region. There is no requirement to do anything special for development inside of the growth boundary. It's where we want growth to occur. So that's a positive element of this agreement. We don't require anything special of any development that's taking place where we are intending more density to be located. But the expansion process can be very complicated, and it requires all 6 center region municipalities to ultimately vote on whether or not an expansion will ever be approved. And the important part there is the host municipality has to be in favor for an expansion to occur. So the other municipalities could never say, this municipality, you need to take more growth and development. It ultimately is the host municipality that's in the driver's seat of saying whether or not they want to have more growth in their community and public sewer in their community in those locations. Go on to the next slide. So as far as what has stayed the same in this agreement, again, we're not changing anything in regards to the expansion process being a local decision. And the process is the same whether it's a developer or it is the municipality themselves that's interested in having the growth boundary and sewer service area expanded. All municipalities, though, would need to participate in voting on any expansion at the general forum. And 5 out of 6 municipalities need to approve the request in order for the growth boundary and sewer service area to be expanded. Again, one of those does have to be the host municipality. So as far as the changes that are proposed, they are fairly minor in nature. The authority and effective date portion of the agreement is being cleaned up. The exceptions, which were located further down in the agreement, are being moved back up towards the top, so it's very early on. People can understand when there might be exceptions where they don't need to go through this process, one of which is if the DEP were to find someone had a failure and they say the only option is to connect to sewer. That's happened, I think, once in the last decade that I'm aware of.
In the center region or in the state?
In the center region. It was the Meyer Dairy over on South Atherton
I'm
Street.
familiar with that project.
Yeah, they had a failure, and DEP said because of the type of effluent they had, they would need to connect to the public sewer system. The background section that was in this agreement, which was quite lengthy, was removed, and there's a reference to the at-a-glance document, the RGB and SSA at-a-glance document that was included with the agenda tonight. And then the limited review process was deleted from the agreement. That process wasn't very well defined in 2013 and was kind of determined not to be of value. Another thing that was in the 2013 agreement that is being reauthorized or would be reauthorized if this revised agreement is adopted is that the municipalities do have the ability to expand the regional growth boundary and sewer service area up to a certain amount without going to the general forum to do so. There are requirements in the agreement of a minimum density that has to be achieved, which is greater than 1 dwelling unit to the acre. And again, it comes down to the host municipality. They're entirely in the driver's seat of whether or not they would want to do that. No one took advantage of that provision between 2013 and 2018 when it expired, but so far the feedback we've received from the other municipalities that we've talked to, they'd like to see that at least reauthorized should anyone ever come in and they feel it would be worthwhile to go through that process. So that is a conclusion of the overview of what's being changed in this agreement. I believe you were given a copy of the agreement with your packet. I'm happy to try to answer any questions or comments or clarifications. The next steps for this is once we get all the municipal comments from all the Center Region municipalities, we'll take this back to the Lucy Committee and CRPC, probably in August or September to talk about it, and then we will have a final version of the agreement to be taken to a general forum meeting for adoption.
What's the time frame do you think on that?
I would think probably by the end of the year we would have this. I know that's our goal is to have it before the end of the year, to have it before the general forum for adoption.
Okay. Anybody from the board have any questions?
Thank you for another good presentation.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Okay, next up on the agenda. Acceptance of the Sandra Podersky property into the 99-year open space preservation lease program. Set a hearing date tentatively for July 13th. I know you're here tonight.
Yes, I am.
Haven't seen you for a long time, but.
No, it hasn't been very kind to me.
I understand you want to get into the program, and can you just give us a brief rundown?
I've been trying to do it for at least 5 years.
I was expecting it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a brief rundown for the public about how many acres you have there and where it's located?
The property is located just east of Waste Fruit Farm. They rent it from me, and every year I think it's some crop, not always the same crop every year. And I have been trying for a long time to get it in the farmland preservation because I absolutely do not want to see houses there. And I will do everything I can to keep from driving out here sometime and seeing 30 houses. It's it's around 35 acres, and it goes clear back and touches some of the Smith Farm.
Now, that abuts the Grayhampton development, correct?
Excuse me?
That property abuts the Grayhampton development, be on the east side?
I guess I'm not familiar with the developments out here because
Okay.
I live somewhere else. And I certainly would appreciate you seriously considering approving this. And I also, it was turned down before because your solicitor didn't turn in a report that she obviously did not understand that the statute of limitations had expired several years before I started doing this. And she kept telling you people that it was encumbered and it wasn't encumbered. And so,
I know you've owned it for a long time.
yeah, I did. And I would do everything I can to keep that piece from looking like Park Forest Village.
Well, we appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of others do too. So.
I was trying to get our attention on.
Okay, yep. Get her up on the thing.
I don't. Patty, can you hear us? Patty? She must not be able to hear us.
Dave, if I could briefly.
Yeah, Reed.
As
Reed's on the,
Chair of the
Yeah.
Open Space
Yeah.
Board, we fully support putting this land into the program. We've been trying for years, and there's been a number of glitches on the way, but finally we've gotten to a place where all the legalities are taken care of. We have the funding, and we think it's a great property to be put into the lease program. Hopefully sometime we can put it into permanent preservation.
thank you.
I would like that very much.
Well, I understand the Open Space Board is working on that project now, getting that outline and regulations set up for that.
Mhm.
All right, have you gotten hold of?
I think there's a
I would
phone
like to
issue.
thank Amy. I would like to give Amy a big thank you. She has worked diligently and kept right on top of it, you know, when I would space out and think that this is never gonna happen. Amy was always there to reassure me that,
We have the best employees.
yes, she is.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
No problem. That's Patty. She just called me to tell me that she's been muted. She hasn't heard any of the Poderski property presentation.
I don't have anybody muted.
No, the computer did an update apparently without.
Can we get that fixed?
So Patty's been updated.
Sorry about that. I mean,
Complete.
I'm not gonna get a
If it doesn't work, I
call
can
from the supervisor that's attending the meeting.
put the owl in your computer. It says it's 100% complete. I don't know why it is still. I don't know if I can just. I should be able to just.
What?
Plug this right into your computer.
This is where they put the virus in.
Yeah. Right beside Ways Orchards, between there and
If you
Stormstown.
go down to Ira and take a left, it's the houses along Ira back, their backyards. Yeah. So it's west of Stormstown, between
Really?
Stormstown and Ways, yeah,
Oh.
pretty sure.
West? Okay.
West, that way.
Hey, that's north to me, whatever way I'm facing, that's north. Has to be.
Oh, he's telling me.
Continue. Let Patty know, but Ron's in touch with her.
It's in the now. You want me to turn the camera on?
We should be able to hear you now.
Can you hear us now, Patty?
She said she could.
But we can't hear her.
I don't know what's going on.
She'll at least get on the records.
I thought the owl was supposed to.
Well,
we could hear her, but once that thing happened.
Yeah, I can hear you, but the picture's upside down.
There we go.
Technology.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
They run it overnight.
Okay. Patty, did you have any questions for Ms. Poderski
Long
or
time ago.
anybody else regarding that?
I didn't hear any of the discussion, but I had read the memo before, and I am on the Open Space Board, so I'm familiar with it. So unless there were any questions or anything that I need to be aware of outside of this memo.
Not that I know of. All right, well, I'm going to call for the question to set a public hearing date for July 13th. Do I hear a motion to do so?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Call for the question, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion approved. Okay. There'll be a hearing on the July the 13th, 2023. I assume that's at 7 PM or slightly thereafter. And I don't foresee any problems, but we'll see what happens. We hope everything goes smoothly this time.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right. Ms. Virginia Nauman, if she's here, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Not here. Anybody else? Okay, how about an adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn, do I hear a second? Moving second, to call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting done at 7:58
Good night.
PM. Have a good evening. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.